Well, Tommy Byrne is the CEO of Anchorage Capital Investment Management and joins us now. Tommy, how on earth do you make money from investing in these? I mean, they're so precious, you could drop them and there goes your fortune.
Yes, stocks and bonds, I guess, don't break when they bounce, though. The best thing about vintage guitars is that they are constantly improving. Actually, much like the segment we just saw with violins, any stringed wooden instrument, every time you strum it, bow it, even play a piano, the vibrations are being sent through the wood, literally changing the molecular structure of the wood, creating a smoother, crisp, very individualistic sound. So same guitar made same day out of the same tree, 50 years later it's going to sound different, and to a trained ear it's going to be important.
Would that even apply if Steve was playing it?
Well, probably not.
Would that improve the value? I'm not sure.
Well, that's right. Should we try a little D?
There you go.
There you go. Very nice. But so how do you invest in these then? I mean, if you've got a fund that people can, you don't have to have enough money to buy a 1960s vintage Gibson Les Paul, do you?
No, I mean, the idea was kind of the genesis of listening to all my friends. I've been collecting for years, and they would have a collection of literally millions of dollars worth of guitars. And I said, well, that's a great retirement fund, isn't it? And they would look at me, I'm never going to get rid of these. And yet they're improving, increasing 30% a year. Some of them, not all of them. And so it occurred to me that it would make sense to put a fund together where it took kind of the impersonal approach, that you have some liquidity to it, and is still able to take advantage of some of these very more expensive guitars. And this is the lower end. This is probably worth $4,000 or $5,000.
That's probably a good thing.
What about association? I mean, what about guitars that are associated with certain musicians as well? I mean, we were talking beforehand about Paul McCartney's Hoffman guitar, or Hoffman-made guitar, wasn't it? I mean, something like that. I mean, I don't know who owns that these days, but we're talking millions, aren't we?
That one hasn't come up for auction that I know of. There is a component of the fund that will invest in memorabilia guitars. Yeah. Just simply being played by somebody famous doesn't make it important, though. It's important because it was Blackie, Eric Clapton's Blackie, went on auction in 2004 or 5 for about just shy of $1 million. That was his go-to guitar. The guitar before that, Brownie, was a Strat that he played and he recorded Layla on. That makes it important, and therefore, that's what people are collecting. It's important. Just to have if Eric Clapton came and signed this guitar, actually, it wouldn't increase the value. If he took it on tour.
Yeah.
Then that would.
We talked about wine a couple of weeks ago, and one thing that seemed very clear is the opening up of the Asian markets had sent the purchases of French red especially into the stratosphere, and the prices went north as well. I mean, I'm presuming there is an Asian market as well which is burgeoning as well, and also you've got long-term collectors like the Hard Rock group as well. I mean, they're always collecting this kind of memorabilia, so there are certain audiences which are growing, and you've only got a limited amount of supply.
Yeah, actually, and the supply is dwindling. There is tremendous desire for these things in all BRIC nations, for instance. Japan has always been a huge buyer of Fender Strats in particular. But as wealth is created around the world, there's more money in the hands of people who are actually buying guitars and want the better ones. So the prices are constantly being pushed up. There's an actual index of prices that Vintage Guitar Magazine put together in 1991. And it was a mid-market price guide, basically, of how these things were doing. So there were no blue chips. There weren't any 1959 Les Paul standards that were, they trade for $300,000 to $500,000 a pop without ever having been in the hands of anybody famous. And that index has improved something like 22% a year for the last 20 years.
And you say this is pretty counter-cyclical. Is that, as Steve was suggesting, because of the boom in Asia to some extent has continued, or at least been pretty robust, and it's that demand that has made it counter-cyclical in perhaps a Western European and US sense? Yeah,
well, I mean, it's non-correlated in the sense that in the past, until this late unpleasantness of the global meltdown, the the markets would, when the stock markets, global markets would, take a deep dip, the index or prices would kind of plateau, and then as soon as the market starts going back up, they would kind of zoom ahead of them.
Tommy, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Tommy Byrne, CEO of Anchorage Capital Investment Management.